Hey guys, welcome to the Lifting Lindsay channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the 3 different divisions of the glute max and how through setup we can actually target or bias each one of these different divisions. So we'll go through the anatomy and setup, and then I'm going to be showing you guys how you can do this in the gym with some of my favorite exercises for each one of these divisions. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to keep this really basic for you guys. We can divide it into 3 different divisions. We have the lower division, we have the mid division, and we have the upper and lateral division. So you'll notice that the upper glute max division is also the one that kind of comes down on the side more laterally. So knowing this, you can kind of think to yourself, okay, maybe what is a division that I'm trying to get a little bit more developed? And next, I'm going to be showing you what pattern of setup and movement will actually be required to overload each division. So let's go ahead and take a look at setup right now. So when it comes to setting up for different divisions of your glutes, I'm going to show you what we need to do as far as the orientation of our femur, our lower body goes. So we're going to start at the lower glutes. So the lower division, we are actually going to put our feet at just a little bit wider than hip width apart, okay? And then we do need some slight external rotation of the upper leg. And when we do that, we're going to allow the toes to just kind of follow and stay in line, okay? So we do need slight external rotation here. So the toes are going to be slightly pointed out. Now remember, this isn't hip width, it's just a little bit wider than hip width. And what that's going to do, it's going to line up that femur just right to line things up for those lower glute max fibers. So if I'm doing a leg press, if I am doing squats, and I really want to bias more of that division, that is how I'm going to be setting up as I go through this movement here. And we do want the knees to be able to go over and stay in line with those toes. Now, sometimes when people are setting up for this, they'll go way too wide. And that's going to do a few things. If I'm this wide, one, it's actually going to limit my range of motion, how comfortable I feel. It's also going to line up these internal muscles, the adductors, more to take on that load. So this is why there are a lot of women who they come to me very frustrated because they're like, oh, my glutes aren't building, but I see that their adductors have really built. And I'll say, do you do everything really wide? And they're like, yeah, I do. And I just don't get what. Yeah, that's why. Because we're lining things up for the adductors. That's not bad. It's not good. It's just, it is what it is. It's what do you want to do? Do you want to line things up for that? Then do that. If you want to line things up more for the lower glutes, then let's just have slightly wider than hip width, a slight bit turning out of those toes and that upper leg, and then we can go through these squat variations or leg presses. You can even do it with lunges, right? So you can go a little bit wider like this with your lunges, just making sure that you're trying to keep that pelvis going forward as you're going through that motion, right? We don't want it too wide, and we don't want to then turn as we do it, but we can just keep a slightly wider path, and that's going to then do that while we keep our pelvis pointed forward. Okay, so then the next one is going to be the mid glute max. And set up for that is actually going to be more of hip width or even just in hip width. So that's going to be the setup where you're going to go through your squats or even split squats more in line like that, okay? So that's how you're going to set up for it. Now your upper glute max, your upper lateral division, that setup is a little bit different. So let me explain this about glute work. When we are trying to work the glutes in a lengthened position, we need hip flexion. Hip flexion is closing the gap between your stomach and your quads. So this is hip flexion, right? Going down into a squat, leaning forward, that is hip flexion. You're creating a lot of hip flexion. So we need to do that for all angles, for the lower, for the mid, for the upper. The upper is just a little bit different in that we do need this hip flexion, but we also need this leg to come more midline. So think about just raising up your leg and then bringing it in at an angle so your knee is more midline with the body. That is going to really lengthen out the upper glute fibers. So have you ever been to a physical therapist and they're trying to stretch your glutes? They're trying to lengthen them. They don't ever say, go really wide now. They never do that. What do they say? They actually have you go something like this, because that is a great way to lengthen out your glute max fibers, especially the upper lateral portion. So what that means, when we're going through movements, we need the knee to come more midline. So we really can't do upper glute max movements both legs at a time. We can only really do it one leg at a time. So I'm going to be showing you a few variations of things that I like doing, like the drop lunge. We can do a slight unilateral variation in a leg press to really work the upper glute max fibers as well. And we can also do this with lunges. So if you're lunging, instead of going out just a little bit, that would be the lower, right? And going forward is going to be the mid. So what do you think the upper glute max? It's going to be you coming, keeping the pelvis pointed forward, but bringing this leg more in line actually with the back leg. So you're going to think about keeping the pelvis going forward and having this one be more midline, bending down, allowing that hip flexion, and then coming up. So that's how you would do walking lunges for all three of those. Let me show you what we would do as far as leg press, and even how we can use the Smith press as a great way to work the upper glute max as well. So let's look at me setting up for leg press here. So I bring the feet high and actually narrow, and this is going to be at about like hip width or a little in, and this is going to be working more of the mid section of the glute max. So next, I'm going to widen my stance just a little bit. So we're slightly pointing those toes out, and then I'm coming down and up. And that is going to be the lower division of the glute max, biasing more of that. Now next I'm setting up, this is going to be for that upper glute max. So it's one leg at a time. I'm bringing my leg in because remember the knee has to land about midline to my body. And then I'm going down and up. Now the leg that's on the ground, some people really enjoy putting that on the platform. It's not really helping, but sometimes that leg can get in the way. Just depends on the type of machine you have. So you can rest it very, very lightly on that platform. But this is going to be more of upper glutes. So here I am using the Smith machine to set up for a drop lunge. This is going to be an upper glute. Notice how the knee comes in midline. I really like this. It's really easy to load and set up. And then I go down, making sure that knee is staying more midline with my body, right? So this is a really easy way to work those upper glutes. Now, if you really wanted to, you could just put the leg more in front, just straight, normal, and that's going to be more mid. So you can see that just by adjusting my feet, I can actually adjust what portion of the glute max we are overloading and working. And the reason why I really wanted to share these particular exercises is because we are getting into a nice lengthened position and we are overloading there. And that is going to work really, really well for hypertrophy. So hopefully this video has helped. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz for the algorithm. And also let me know in the comment section what other exercises or other things within fitness you'd like to learn a little bit more about.